Could Diddy get bail? May sound like a long shot, but is there something that could maybe change the judge's mind? Well, we're going to be speaking with the bail bondsman to the stars, Ira Judelson, about whether Diddy may get out in a rumored new bail package. He has been working with Diddy's team. Plus, what can we expect about whether the rap mogul will spend the next decade or two behind bars?
Diddy just lost everything. The courtroom was dead silent as the judge looked him straight in the eyes and read out the one thing he thought he could still escape: a harsh, unforgiving prison sentence. And the second those words came out, Diddy didn't just break, he exploded. This wasn't a smooth, untouchable mogul. This wasn't the billionaire brand. Diddy didn't just break.
Conspiracy and 2 counts of sex trafficking. Now we ask, what is his sentence going to be on those 2 charges, the Mann Act charges? And there's also another question that we're going to address today. Could he get bail? Could he get out? You might be saying, Jesse, wait a second. He was denied bail at every turn. And you would be right, he was. Despite proposing extensive bail conditions during the course of this legal saga, including a $50 million bail package and monitoring by private security personnel, the court was not convinced. Now, by law, the defense has the burden to prove that Combs is not a flight risk or danger to the community. And given the charges, the allegations, including that he was improperly trying to contact people in the case pre-trial, he was always denied release. But then there's what happened after the verdict last week. And this is an interesting conversation. And again, we're going to be speaking with Ira Judelson in a minute, who's been working with Diddy's team on possibly getting him released. But after the verdict, the defense applied for Combs to be released from detention pending sentencing. But that request was again denied by Judge Arun Subramanian. The defense argued, look, he's no longer charged with RICO, there's no longer presumption of detention, we have his passport, there's no access to private planes, there's no criminal history, this is his first conviction, he would be a fool to mess any of this up because he was just given his life back by the jury, he wasn't convicted of the highest charges, he was facing up to life in prison, now he's not. He should be allowed to return to his property, his mansion in Florida. There'll be a $1 million bond. Now, the government argued, look, Sean Combs, he was convicted of serious charges, Mann Act violations. There was physical abuse in this case. There was prolific use and distribution of drugs. He committed crimes while under investigation, including having drugs in his hotel room when he planned to surrender to federal authorities back in September of 2024. And Judge Arun Subramanian denied the bail application, sided with the government, that these convictions on these charges, by law, they trigger the mandatory detention statute, that the defense conceded Combs is violent. They conceded that at trial, quote, we own the domestic violence. That's what the defense had said. The judge also made the point that it was impossible for the defense to demonstrate that he poses no danger, particularly given his violence after the searches of his properties and when he knew he was under investigation. That's the whole Violent Jane episode, attacking Jane, one of the victims in this case. And also that the evidence at trial showed there was a years-long pattern of abuse and violence. But despite the judge denying Combs' release once again, and given that his sentencing has officially been confirmed for October 3rd, that was agreed by both the defense and the prosecution yesterday, could he get out beforehand? It's an interesting question. Let me bring in right now a special guest. I am joined by one of the most renowned bail bondsmen, probably in the country, definitely in New York.
A man watching his legacy burn in front of the world with cameras rolling and justice closing in from all sides. It had been building for days. Witness after witness. Whispers turned into roars. Evidence boxes filled the table. Sealed depositions, encrypted audio files, hundreds of pages of text contracts, surveillance logs. It wasn't just allegations anymore. It was an archive of abuse. Every claim had been corroborated. NDAs that looked more like gag orders for violent behaviors. Security logs showing repeated late-night visits. Internal emails ordering staff to keep a hush. Phone records putting his private jets on exclusive flights linked to those infamous freak-off gatherings. By the end, it wasn't a jury vote. It was a moral collapse. When the sentence dropped, Diddy didn't show up for the apology. He didn't bow his head. Instead, he erupted. He slammed. Diddy didn't show up for the apology. He didn't bow his head. Instead, he erupted. He slammed his...
$50 million, right?
Yes.
You know, the idea of private security. It was an
Yes.
interesting argument because who would monitor him. It was interesting because the prosecution at one point had said it's not fair, right? He's a wealthy celebrity who's providing a bail package that other people in a similar position wouldn't be able to provide. Now, the defense was like, well, the only reason we're presenting a package like this is because of what he's accused of and his wealth and his resources. We have to address that in a certain way. The reason it's so extensive is because of his wealth and resources. That bail package that was put forward was rejected by the court. What did you make of that?
Well, at that time, the judge was looking at the RICO Act and sex trafficking. So, Puffy was looking at possibly 25 years, or more, depending on what the guidelines were based on if he was convicted. So at 55 years old, at that time, it's almost a life sentence. So, and he has a lot of wealth and he had a private plane. So the judge was looking at that. Plus, in the federal system, they look at danger to the community. Where in the state system, they're not allowed to look at that. They look at risk of flight. So I think with all the letters behind that were coming in that we were not really privy to from a lot of the alleged victims, I think the judge made a decision that, hey, this is not going to be sufficient enough. I thought that at the end, he kind of, when we brought in our private security team and we showed him who was going to be doing it, we did Sam Bankman-Fried. So we knew that, we would be completely covered on that end. And we gave him the idea of there would be no Wi-Fi in the building that we were looking at, and that he would not be able to really be able to connect with anybody but his legal team and his family. We thought at that point that maybe we had a chance, but at the end, the judge denied it, and that's where we stood. And now on this case coming forward, after the convictions, after he wasn't convicted, at the end, we didn't know what he was going to do. So, when Mark reached out to me afterwards, we started thinking about putting another bail package together.
And what is that bail package and by the way, is this a bail package that you think could be submitted again even after the judge just denied bail?
Well, the judge denied bail based on the statute, and the statute stated a certain amount of information that part of the Mann Act that, was not eligible for bail. There are certain circumstances that can be done. We're going to regroup again. I know that they were going to go talk to Mr. Combs again and see what happens there. They have the October 3rd date. And I don't know where he stood. As of the other day, he wanted to get out. I don't think anybody wants to be at MDC where he is. So we're going to reconvene and see what happens, at a later date. We could go back with another package.
Would it require him to stay in New York? Would it be him to be? I know he wanted to go back to his property.
He hissed in fury. He screamed.
He hissed in fury. He screamed. His legal team scrambled, but no one could save him now from himself. One report said he tried to storm the judge's bench. Others say he only got 5 feet before guards escorted him out. That moment, caught on live stream, replayed endlessly showed a man who just realized how powerless he'd become. You could feel it ripple across the digital world in seconds. The fan base fractured. Some still clung to the music, clinging to the belief that innocent until proven guilty. Others dropped merch in protest. Diddy Down began trending next to Child Justice Served. Article editors rushed Headshot, his blue-tinted frames replaced by stark mugshot. Overnight, Spotify playlists replaced Keep Dreaming Volume 2 with Celebrating Survivors Volume 1. One Seal brand deals froze immediately. Private discussions among executives leaked. What liability does this carry? Network specials were pulled. Hall of Fame nominations were shelved. One concert promoter texted, "Can't risk my event being the one he was indicted for." And in studios across LA and Atlanta, collaborators quietly deleted track credits. Intro.
It's favorable ruling. Obviously, he was convicted. He's not entirely happy with it, and his defense counsel explained that. But they also, in their press conference after the verdict, they were jubilant. They were ecstatic. And I wonder if he gets a favorable sentence, is he even going to challenge this? I mean, they seem happy.
Yeah, they seem ecstatic because the emotions that kind of ran outside of the courtroom, it was kind of double that inside the courtroom, where all the defense attorneys were hugging, they were crying. So seeing them outside in the press conference, all kind of holding hands, going up, that was just a little slice of the cake from what we all saw inside that federal courtroom. But I think it can kind of go both ways, and that's mainly because Sean Combs is still behind bars right now. The judge didn't grant him bail even after the verdict, and I think his reasoning might give us a little kind of picture into what the sentencing might possibly look like, because the judge even pointed out during his denying of Diddy's bail after his conviction, which were on counts 3 and 5, kind of talking back to what had happened in June of 2024 with Jane and the violent altercation that happened over at Jane's apartment. And so I'm thinking, if the judge is already kind of on his mind about the whole domestic violence aspect and the physical violence that was exuded from the defendant, even just last year, I think it's possible maybe the judge, even if he hears from the family, even if he hears from Sean Combs' friends, that it's possible it might be kind of a little bit of a tougher sentence than maybe the defense was expecting.
Well, look, I think the defense might be wanting to take advantage of this, right? Now, the judge said, even though I'm denying bail and I'm looking at the violence factor, it's not a preview of what I'm going to do for sentencing. But I think this is the opportunity for the defense to submit any kind of mitigating factors and have the probation officer speak to his friends and family and talk about the impact of this. I mean, we just interviewed Charlucci the other day. So I wonder if they're saying, you know what? They said to Sean Combs, listen, let's wait for October. Gives us more time to present our case to Judge Arun Subramanian. And then we had the hearing today. This monumental hearing.
Was great.
You've been in court for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
This was what, like 7 seconds?
I think maybe even less than, I would say,
What
kind
happened?
of close to 5. So
Yeah.
get all the way down to the courthouse. I'm like seeing everybody
Which
from
is
the
not
trial.
close from here, so people know.
it's not. It's not. And it was hot outside too. So
all the way downtown,
walking
yeah.
all the way down, or not, I didn't walk all the way downtown. From the subway to the walk to the courthouse.
Okay.
Get there, check in all my stuff. I would say the security check-in was longer than the actual hearing.
Okay.
So it was a remote hearing. We didn't see Sean Combs in person. We didn't see any of the attorneys on both sides. We didn't even see the judge. And so what had happened was we get inside kind of the overflow room.
Oh, the overflow room, okay.
Yep. So we get inside the overflow room. There's a big, giant screen. It's completely black. But then you hear Sean Combs' voice being like, Mark, are you there? And so it was kind of like one of those dial-in type of hearings. And so we heard Mark Agnifilo's voice. Then all of a sudden we hear the prosecution's voice. It was Christy Slavic. She was accompanied by Emily Johnson, both who work on behalf of the government. And then all of a sudden, Mark Agnifilo was kind of like, you know what, we were able to work everything out as far as our sentencing date goes. And then the judge's clerk is like, oh, okay, so both parties agree, and then this matter is adjourned.
Stop.
The calls sought out damage control lawyers of their own. Sentencing is rarely the end. It's the prelude. Prosecutors have hinted at sealed investigations, new subpoenas, new allegations, new victims in waiting. Anything from wiretaps to insider recordings is now in the court's orbit. Legal scholars note once a high-profile defendant crashes is hard, the ripple effect compounds. He's looking at appeals, retroactive subpoenas, even potential federal inquiries. Fans are asking, is this a pivotal moment? With Diddy's empire bleeding, we're watching culture rewire itself. Confidence in power structures is fading. People are asking why this didn't happen sooner after the first lawsuit, the first whisperer, the first troubling leak. Is this the turning point where silence and status end? Or will another fatal scandal rise swallowed too quickly? Journalists wrote op-eds asking the hard questions. Do we reward musicians for accountability, or just omit allegories of horror from their legacy? Legal analysts suggest now's the time to rewrite contract clauses to mandate behavioral transparency. Brands wonder if cancel culture didn't leap, if institutions just wake up too late. His lawyers are frantically preparing motions, claiming the judge overreached, citing new evidence suggesting selective enforcement. But can any legal magic undo these headlines? Not now. Not after public sentiment shifted in minutes. Now, the next batch of hearings bring live juror testimony on concealment structures. More evidence is being leaked, perhaps by insiders seeing shifting tides. Meanwhile, former allies are now speaking, albeit softly. A former manager said behind closed doors he offered Diddy rehab for aggression, but was refused. A VIP stylist confirmed one of the freak-off events nearly ended in violence. These behind-the-scenes voices weren't allowed before, but with sentencing passed, testimony immunity is emerging. As the court date for intake nears, Diddy's choices narrow. He could play for public sympathy, roll out contrition videos, or retreat into silence. But the clock is ticking. Each day of quiet costs momentum, trust, and possibly any chance at future fashion lines or labels. His legacy label, Bad Boy Records, is reportedly shifting ownership quietly within the family. Lawyers preparing separation agreements for artists wanting to distance their catalogs. Family photos sanitized. Mansion properties left in trusty limbo. Luxury cars hidden quietly. The outward signs of a man who must rebuild from a cell, not a boardroom. What happens after sentencing is just phase one. Will this lead to systemic reform? Will similar lawsuits align? Will sponsors demand ethical conduct clauses? The culture is watching. Every stakeholder from label execs to touring crews now assessing. What will I do if my employer goes down for this? In that audio clip of the sentencing, many will hear more than the years he's sentenced for. They'll hear a moment of truth, a court with finality imposing consequences when fans didn't. They'll hear institutions close. Goes down for this. In that audio clip of the sentencing, many will hear more than the years he's sentenced for. They'll hear a moment of truth, a court with finality imposing consequences when fans didn't. They'll hear institutions closing.
Right. In this case, I think as far as just kind of the allegations towards men were really just having to do with the escorts or the entertainers, as they were also called in the criminal trial. But for the most part, it seemed like from what we heard in the criminal trial, which I know a lot of people are a little disappointed because they thought it would be a lot more, but really it was just kind of like just different isolated incidents involving two victims, being Jane and Cassie. But it seemed like there wasn't a lot of discussion about male victims in this trial, but there were little points that were brought up in terms of like the civil matters, those including like Bonna and her civil claim, Dawn Richard and her civil claim. I think even during the cross-examination of Cassie, one of the defense attorneys, that would be Anna Esteval, she had asked, you know, was the baby oil laced? And I was thinking back to the civil claims, because a lot of civil claims had, a lot of civil suits had claimed that
it wasn't laced.
That it was laced, or yeah, the civil suits claimed it was laced, but then in the criminal trial, Cassie had confirmed that the baby oil was never laced with any type of narcotics or anything like that.
By the way, Combs' legal team said in a statement to Page 6, quote, Mr. Combs' trial and acquittal on trafficking and RICO charges proves what we have been saying all along. Mr. Combs never sexually assaulted or trafficked anyone. That people continue to broadcast and file false accusations, no matter how heinous and uncorroborated, is unfortunate. But Mr. Combs will not back down. He will fight for as long as necessary to win his full vindication. I talked about on a previous sidebar how he might tackle all these lawsuits, maybe motions to dismiss, maybe try to say, you know, these Jane and John Doe shouldn't proceed under pseudonyms. If you can convince a court of that, they may be reluctant to continue the case if they have to expose their identities. He might try to get rid of them at initial stages as much as possible.
And he was successful at that at the beginning, too.
Yeah, a few of them, right?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the jurors, okay? So first, a juror has spoken out since the verdict. Not surprising, we had a feeling this would happen. This unnamed juror apparently spoke to ABC and said that the public reaction to this decision, quote, is highly insulting and belittling to the jury and the deliberation process. We spent over 2 days deliberating. Our decision was based solely on the evidence presented and how the law is stated. We would have treated any defendant in the same manner regardless of who they are. I have nothing else to say. Now, you watch the jury, okay? And we'll talk about what an alternate juror had to say too, but you watch the jury. You watch them day in and day out. What do you make of that statement?
I was a little surprised by
Really?
that statement, just a little bit, only because, and I shouldn't say anything surprising to me when it comes to this trial, I found that statement surprising only because we clearly had heard the same evidence. Obviously, they saw a little bit more than I saw being inside the gallery. Some of the exhibits we weren't able to see, that sort, and that included, you know, the freak-off tapes, the hotel night tapes, all of that stuff. And so I was surprised by the jury's decision. It's mainly to count 2. Not as surprised.
Sex trafficking.
Yeah, sex trafficking
Cassie.
to Cassie. Yeah, not really surprised with count 1 or even count 4 even. Either.
So racketeering and sex trafficking.
Yeah, I know. I'm just naming the counts,
yeah.
not actually specifying them or anything. But I get also why the juror made that very pointed statement too, because given the
And then breaking, they'll hear a future defined by accountability and an empire in ruins. And somewhere in that courtroom moment, we'll remember one thing. Diddy thought he could buy or charm his way out of it all. He thought this, and then breaking, they'll hear a future defined by accountability and an empire in ruins. And somewhere in that courtroom moment, we'll remember one thing. Diddy thought he could buy or charm his way out of it all. He thought the system catered to him. But in that final moment, the judge didn't care. The jurors didn't care. The victims didn't care. That was his reckoning. And the echoes of that reckoning haven't stopped. Since the sentencing, a second wave of silence has shattered. Artists who were too scared to speak up are now telling their stories. A former backup singer shared what she called a night of psychological warfare, where she said she was trapped in a room for hours while music blared and instructions were whispered in her ear through a hidden earpiece. Another producer revealed he was blacklisted for refusing to attend a private weekend at Diddy's Hamptons estate. Say no once and you're done. He wrote anonymously. Investigative journalists have begun publishing detailed timelines that draw lines between events fans thought were isolated. Disappearances from award shows, public breakdowns, industry fallouts, rejected interviews. Suddenly, dots that never seemed connected now form a pattern. The image, one man standing in the middle of a machine built to crush anyone who stepped out of line. Behind the scenes, studios are quietly pulling rights. Distribution deals are being reviewed. Back catalog licensing is on hold. Fashion partnerships have dissolved. Executives are meeting behind closed doors, not to fix Diddy's image, but to prevent the next empire from collapsing in the same way. Lessons are being learned the hard way. A-list artists are reviewing their contracts. Staffers are requesting HR protections. Social media managers are developing emergency distancing protocols in case their client becomes the next name in the headlines. On the legal side, there's movement too. Attorneys representing other victims are using the Diddy verdict as a foundation. Civil lawsuits are being drafted. Testimonies are being collected. Prosecutors are looking for patterns. This isn't about one man anymore. It's about how many years the system allowed him to operate unchecked. And still Diddy sits in that holding cell, reportedly isolated from general population. Sources say he hasn't slept well, that he's tried to control his image even from behind bars, issuing statements through PR reps and pushing interviews with allies. But even those statements have started to sound hollow. There's no redemption arc here. Not now. Not after the floodgates opened. There are rumblings that Diddy's team is planning an appeal, but legal experts say the bar for overturning this kind of conviction is sky high. The evidence was too strong, the narrative too complete, and public opinion completely against him. Judges may be impartial, but they aren't deaf. They know what kind of message leniency would send. And after everything that's come out, leniency would spark riots. For decades, Diddy was untouchable. He wore power like a second skin. Now, he wears an inmate number, and that's more than a legal punishment. It's a cultural symbol, a warning shot, a final chapter. But maybe not the end of the book, because if this story taught us anything, it's that every industry has its secrets. Every empire has cracks. And sometimes it only takes one name falling for the whole illusion to come crashing down. The real question now, who's next,